Okay, right, guys. Thanks for taking the time joining us here today. We have Ed and James from Harmonic, and myself and Joe from Autocomply. We've been working together for a while now, and we're constantly seeing the concerns around AI and governance and compliance and risk. So we're just going to have a chat about what we're seeing going on in the world, in the market, and basically trying to understand the gaps between where an organization might think they are, what they've got under control, and what's happening in the real world in 2026 with the advancement of all the AI tools and just how many tools are getting adopted so quickly. One thing to sort of kick it off, we've seen massive incidents in the last months and even weeks. We saw in our world the incident with Delve, where allegedly there is a lot of fake SOC 2 certifications, and that then means there's a whole host of third parties, subprocessors of subprocessors who are massively exposed at risk. The certifications are invalid. So what does that mean for everyone around it? So we're seeing that not just with the Delve incident, we've seen things like Vercel with their incident recently. We're seeing like AI and tools not just coming through necessarily a back door, through quite a standard route to get into something, through like an author or something like that. But companies are somewhat unaware of it. Maybe they are aware of it, but they just trusted the tool implicitly to give it everything, like we've seen with OpenClaw and things like that, where it can have full access. So love to get your point of view on, from Harmonic's point of view, from that AI risk and governance, what you're seeing and what you think, like where the gap is between what people are aware of and what they're not actually aware of.
I think the Dell thing's a really interesting thing to call out, because I don't know whether there has been a unspoken understanding that SOC 2 certificates need a little bit more emphasis on their credibility and how they're achieved. I think there are plenty of organizations out there that go through the certification program with a high level of focus, their morals in the right place, and trying to do it from a point of proving some level of attestation properly, for then other companies to want to go and get it as fast as possible, because right now it's just a route to market. So I think AI has probably made that a little bit easier for companies just to kind of like blindly trust that an AI system is going to get them compliant. And I don't necessarily agree that that's the right approach. We at Harmonic had to get our compliance sorted in a row pretty quickly if we wanted to kind of win the areas of the markets we're going towards. But it still took us 6 months to a year to get into a place where we were really confident that when we go to audit, we without question will be able to pass and prove it in a really efficient way. So I think we're also going on the journey of learning where we can get benefits from AI in that place, but I don't like how it's kind of blurred the lines of the trust level of certification now, which is kind of where we are with the recent news.
I do think it's sort of exposed something that's always been the case, though, as you were sort of saying. Some people are paying lip service, whereas other people are doing it authentically. I think that's always been a problem. So it's just sort of brought that to the fore, and made it sort of a bit more obvious that that's what's been going on. I think it's right that everyone questions the quality of the certifications that are presented to them in third party, and I think it's caused something that's actually, this pressure has built up over time in third parties, where they're perhaps, when you're managing a bunch of third parties, you're going to have to go back and check your homework and double check it. I think it's just emphasised the need to do that more. So there's nothing wrong with that process. It's just a lot of work, and someone's got to do it, and maybe some kind of automation could help with this.
Wonder what that could be. I think that's it. I think the standards are a good thing, and that's been challenged recently. Like, it was pointless anyway, but it's absolutely not. It's there for a reason. It's agreed by the market that's what people should have. But I think the challenge, whether it's a startup, whether it's a scale up, whatever it is, they want to sell to enterprise. Typically, it's, have you got this certificate? And that's where people will then look at solutions where we can get it to you in a week or so, which is just wild when there's 6 months observation periods. It was like, how is that impossible? Turns out it's not. But like you said, it's where people now find the frustration from what we see is it's the work, it's the manual piece of pulling it all together. And I think with what's going on, I think the certificates, when they're stamped, everything's good, right? You've done everything you need to do to meet that today. A week later, a month later, 6 months later, that certificate doesn't look anything like what's going on in the company with all the tools that are being added, all the tools that are being used without authority. I know you've talked about this quite extensively about like where people are accessing their own Claude or ChatGPT subscription, uploading company documents into it, and it's like just wild exposure that a lot of people are unaware of, and these people managing companies don't know what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when it comes to where AI is proving a problem right now is that it can be seen to solve problems through like augmenting your work or automating your work, but you really have to come at using AI with a lens of how is it going to support the current stuff that you're doing. People just think it's going to reinvent the wheel. Like, I can be certified by saying use AI and I'm certified within a week. Well, the same is true with AI within anything in the world. If it sounds too good to be true, probably is. And I think we need to be educating organizations to be aware of that, but also how to use AI in effective ways. Like, it may take you a year to become fully ISO 27001 certified, but it doesn't mean you have to sit there and doing a bunch of manual legwork. There are ways to use AI that can make that effective that aren't just being like, make me certified as the prompt. And that includes both monitoring your controls and seeing how people are using AI in your business that may be a non-conformity, to also using it to help you achieve that certification as well.
And AI is obviously, it still has to operate within the bounds of what we've set out in legislation and regulation, haven't we? And that's one of the big things that was pulled out in this instance, which is the claims to be SOC 2 certified in such a short period of time, where we've already defined observation periods. AI can't fix that for us. It can make it easier, but it's never going to change what is set out as a rule. So I think that has been one of the biggest gaps, is what you said there about augmentation and it being an assistant in this process, being able to highlight where it can speed things up, where it can assist. The workload has increased drastically, right? Like, it seems like everybody's able to create an app in their bedroom now.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, as a DPO, as any form GSE, you've got so much work now to independently verify these massive tools that are coming through.
Yeah, and you may not even have visibility of it. So as a DPO, you assume that you have obligations you have to your customers. Those obligations don't change.
Yeah.
They're going to remain a constant, and you've got to make sure you're delivering on those. At the same time, you've got people using more tools than they used to use to achieve their business goals, and the tendency for people to navigate outside of the agreed way of approving third parties is, people are playing a little bit more fast and looser with the rules of the road, because ultimately they want to get their job done. And if they can do that quickly by using whatever great new tool is out there, they're going to do it, and they may take the risk of navigating around the policy of the organization. Not a case at Harmonic, obviously, but I think that is the case for a lot of companies, right? They've got this divergence between what they think is being used and what's actually in use, and that problem isn't sort of going away, and it doesn't change your obligations that you have to your customers. So it feels like there's this sort of gap that's opened up, and now people working both in compliance and assurance have to close that gap. And it's not going to take 5 minutes. It's going to take a little while to close it. And I think because of the velocity of change and the scale of it, then I think you have to be quite thoughtful about how you're going to play catch up. We're quite lucky in that we're a relatively small organization compared to some of the larger enterprises out there. So it's a bit easier for us to do the sort of what I call swivel chair security, where you can just literally turn your chair and see the things in front of you and assure them. But if you're 10,000 people, that's a very different problem. and you've really got to apply some thought to it to work out how you're going to close that gap.
And there's a risk as well with the velocity of it. It's always been an issue where you're seen as the blocker to these things. Now more than ever, because the workload is just 10x, and if not more, and over again, because everyone has this tool now that fixes things, and those tools themselves are intercommunicating with each other, and the spread of data between those tools. It's not just that one-time observation when you need to do it. They're developing their tools quicker than you can review them last week. So by the time you come to review it, after that, they've built a whole new subset of features. They've onboarded their new subprocessors. The role is growing exponentially, isn't it? With the amount of
it's vastly different than what it was before, and I think the underlying common denominator that we're kind of not really talking about but should be is what trust means now. If you go back a little while ago, security still uses trust but verify as its avenue for getting a good level of understanding and assurance of something. Like you trust what they're saying to you, but you go and verify that. A few years ago, a lot of that was done through questionnaires, and you trust that someone's answer in a questionnaire is accurate, but you might verify that with a few follow-ups or a few probes or asking for a certificate. Fast forward and to more than a couple of years recently, people have been shifting to trust centers and putting things out on the internet and being like, this is my posture, you can trust me. And I think, with recent news and the use of AI, the gap between what you can trust and how you verify that is becoming bigger. And that's really where I see we need a seismic shift, is how can we ensure that we trust the people we work with in terms of our vendors and our third parties? How can we trust that even our own reviews are correct, right? Because you mentioned earlier that internal teams are going faster than ever, sometimes negating a level of privacy review. But the fact is, I guarantee you there is someone who's asked ChatGPT, well, is this done in a compliant way to my business? Yeah. ChatGPT will never tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
Or very rarely will an AI model actually tell you they're wrong. They will gaslight you. And I guarantee you there are people that have gone, no, this meets your internal privacy policy, you're all good to go, thinking they're doing the right thing. But quite frankly, they're not, because the privacy posture is changing. So I think we have to find out a better way of identifying trust and continuously assessing trust with the people we work with, but also then having our own internal trust. Yeah. That we're using these tools that give that verification in the correct way.
It's interesting. I think verification itself has changed, because I'm an old compliance and security guy, right? So, and in the old days, you'd think, well, has somebody got a policy, and does that policy broadly look like the right thing that should be there? If I viewed that, I'd sort of believe that the company was doing it, because somebody actually had to sit down and take the time to write the document, and it has to look plausible, and they have to have some understanding of the topic to actually write it. And of course, LLMs are incredibly good at assimilating something that looks compelling or convincing, even if it's just a complete hallucination. So the verification bit is completely changed, because I can no longer rely on the fact that somebody understands the topic and demonstrates it by writing it down. This thing's probably been, given to an LLM, and it's coughed it up. Are they actually living that? That's the question we've got to ask. Is that real? Have they tested it? Is there evidence that they've tested it? It's a very different question you have to ask today, perhaps, from the one that you used to ask, back, sort of 5 or 6 years ago. So,
and because of that, are you seeing more obvious mistakes in the documents that you're reviewing as part of the process?
I think I'm seeing more obvious things, like they're unaware and a document contradicts itself. Yeah. They may say one thing at the top of the policy, and at the bottom they're saying they do it a different way, or they have, cross-pollinating policies that reference each other that contradict each other. That's really what I'm seeing. You might have a password policy that talks about you must have MFA enabled and your password policy to be 14 characters long, but then there's some secure access policy somewhere that says something different, because they're not looking at things in a policy is a suite of controls, a suite of procedures that we want to hold a business to, and they're looking at each individual document as the thing that makes them trustworthy and the thing that makes them compliant, and that's too old school. And I think we probably don't know what good looks like at the minute. I think there's a big journey to go on, but as JC said, there is a level of companies still have documents that show how they're doing. We need to go back and verify whether that's true or not. And if they are contradicting each other, well, that's fine. That could be a genuine mistake that needs to be addressed, or that could be AI slop. And it's those two areas of nuance that become a different conversation with the vendor you're having.
Yeah.
I wonder, actually, you follow a guy called Corey Doctorow at all? He's an interesting chap. He involved in things like the Open Rights Group and others. And he talks about the enshittification of the internet. And one of his big theses is that over time, if you're using these sort of tools to assimilate large documents, then you overall lower the quality by sloppifying, to use a more polite term, the content. And really what it comes down to is whether or not your belief in the organization being authentic or not. I think if you can get the organization to supply you enough evidence that you truly believe that they're doing the things that they're saying, then you probably, it's a kind of a gut feeling, like you're going to get a gut feeling of, actually, I kind of trust what these folks are doing. They're being transparent, they're being open, they're being honest, they're supporting their arguments through actual evidence that I buy into, versus it's a document that says I do a business continuity plan, which completely contradicts this other document over here. It's clearly been written by some kind of large language model. Like, I really don't trust this, so I'm now going to ask a ton of questions about, proving, okay, you say you do this, do you? And I think that was the whole thing for Delve customers who had not maybe been authentic in the way that they'd implemented their services. People are like, well, hang on a minute, this is slop. So what are you doing? Like,
for many of us, we thought moving to trust centers would be a better practice. Moving away from questionnaires, it would allow our teams to be able to automate things better and move faster and fix these problems. But because we're seeing these new issues popping up all the time, we're seeing more and more teams going back to asking questionnaires and using what we consider to be like broken policies in the past, because we just don't have that level of verification in what exists on the public internet. Because like we said there, we can throw up any information on the internet using LLM, put a document together, but it's actually evidence and the controls of that evidence that we want to see, isn't it?
You want to introduce you want them to feel like you want to have a sense of peril for any compliance organization. They need to know that they're obligated legally and take those obligations seriously. If you convince yourself that that's happening, then you suddenly get a warm fuzzy feeling about them, and that's the kind of evidence you can present to say, we made some good decisions from a privacy or a compliance perspective.
With trust centers as well, I think one of the things is, one, it's a static document, but two, it's you can just put something up. You can just say, we've got a certificate, we've got this. And you'd like to think that most people wouldn't do that, but I'm sure there will be people who do it just to get through that first customer and, we'll fix it afterwards kind of thing, which is why that doesn't work. And I think going back to the point around questionnaires, like that's just so manual and archaic. But people do it because there's an element of, this de-risks me. You've answered the question.
You're literally ass covering.
Exactly. So, but I think even now, like partly with what you were saying about the amount of work that's coming down the pipe because of the number of tools that are coming out and the fact that it is an archaic practice, I think people are now starting to wake up to the fact that this isn't going to be sustainable.
That's exactly right. I was talking to some CISOs who were part of a collection of law firms, and I was talking to them about how they get assurance on their supply chains that use automated tools to provide that compliance. And they basically said to me, well, we don't trust them. So if you're using, I'll just name a few, like Secure Frame, Drata Vanta, these sorts of Delve, these sorts of tool sets, they just say, well, as soon as I see one of those, I'm just going to ask a ton more questions. And when I sort of dug in, I was like, that's interesting, because like we're a Drata user, we see value in having a place to put our authentic documents. I was like, okay, like we're going to have a conversation about this. How like, tell me more about that. And it basically comes down to whether or not they trust the certification, and whether or not they felt that the evidence was authentic or not. And actually, if you start to dig it, if you can prove that, then they're kind of okay. Like they're all right with it.
It's tough to verify, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but there is a lack of trust on trust centres,
And the
which
way
means you have to verify more.
and the way you verify has changed, because the way you used to verify is no longer valid.
And that's what really, really frustrates me with the current kind of GRC space and journey is it's broken. It just needs to be reinvented. Like you said, people are going back to questionnaires. They are, which is just broken. The whole trust center thing feels a bit like a wet firework, because it was such a good progression in companies to be more transparent and to own their posture and to stick it out on the internet. That is good. We must talk about how positive that is for an organization to lay their groundwork on the table for all to see and own it. But that has been masked by putting crap out there or stuff they don't understand and using it as a marketing engine or a go-to-market tool, which quite frankly they are. And that really kind of, I guess, is a bee in my bonnet, because I don't see my trust center like that. I don't see what we're doing there, because I really value the information I put there. We move so far along to be like, be self-service, don't do questionnaires, go and find the information you're out. That's what we kind of want to push at Harmonic, is that it's all there for you. Like, it's really hard to do questionnaires. You want to buy a tool, you want quick sales cycles, you want to get a good understanding, we'll go and self-serve. It's all there. And that's a really good place to be in. But because the state of the world in trust centers right now is untrustworthy, you have to fall back on what you knew worked before. And I think there's only a few people, you guys in the room, that are trying to work out what the next bit looks like. What does a reinvented level of trust posture look like? I think we all agree that it's continuous. It's continuous monitoring and having continuous conversation about the posture. I think we all agree that trust is a mix of governance, risk, compliance, and privacy, and that a DPO and a security person need to be in the same room having the same conversations about these things. But also that we need to be able to solidify, that's not even a word, we need to be so sure that what they're saying is being verified against what we believe to be true, and making that really easy to digest, because we're in this world now where we know it's a broken process. No one's really doing anything about it. We've fallen back on bad practice of doing questionnaires because we feel like we have an element of control. Well, where does this go next? And that's the kind of thing where I think is a chance and opportunity for you guys to like jump and prove that there is a better way of doing it. We may have to drag people along the journey a little bit and live with a bit of crappy process for a bit. But
well, we've spoke about that before as well, haven't we? That, like, you know, we've all worked with or in big organisations that live with bad processes because that's how we've always done it. I think AI is forcing the issue because of the amount of speed that things are coming in, that they can't live with it. And we're seeing how we mitigate that from, you can just remove it entirely, or if you've got a questionnaire, you can put it into the platform and it will actually then gather the information and go, right, instead of 150 questions, you need 6. You know, you need 10, whatever it'll be. Like, you just need these are the gaps we don't have. Like, we'll run that gap analysis, and then you just get, I mean, that works better for everyone, because you're getting, the vendor then only has 10 questions to answer rather than 150. And then they'll get it through quicker and they can use it. Because, I mean, you mentioned about the go-to-market side. That's what people want to use tools for. They want to go, right, I need this because it'll help me sell this, and I can do that, I can move forward. You don't want to be stuck in a 6-month cycle of it going around the houses of 3 different departments while someone checks it out, looks at this. And
whilst your competitor is in YOLO mode and is implementing it all over the place.
Absolutely, So I think that's the big shift we're trying to implement, and I think there's a bit of, like I say, dragging people along with some of it. But that's the thing about anyone adopting it early now, is it's like when you adopt AI early, that, you know, if you go out to San Francisco, there's very much a San Francisco versus the rest of the world scenario a lot of the time, and it's like, oh, AI is going to replace everything, there's going to be no jobs for everyone. And then you go anywhere else outside of San Francisco and you're thinking, that really sleepy town and country, whatever it'll be, they're not going to be catching on too quick. It'll come, but just not as quick as what's happening over on the West Coast as well. So I think that's where those who are doing it now, the advantage is with them, and they will be able to do that and move quicker and have that trust and be able to, like say, evidence it and everything else funnily about the AI slot, there was a tool came out last week that put spelling mistakes in to show that it's making it look like a human.
This is the authenticism that comes from spelling mistakes.
Yes.
Is a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
I have a constant conversation with colleagues who like using M dashes in how
And
they
now can't.
communicate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know that's got full of M dashes. No one's going to believe that you wrote that, but it's actually how they write. That's just the literature that they've used before.
We're based in the UK, aren't we? At this moment in time, and the obvious one is the Americanization of the English language. That when we use S's and there's a U in the word colour, but as soon as you see that anywhere, it's all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've either got an American lawyer because you're based out of that country, or you've quite obviously used AI.
Well, there's an inexplicable level of emoji use in this bit of text.
That's the attack.
why is the privacy policy got loads of thumbs up?
That does also expose a new risk, doesn't it? So that the DPO or whoever's in charge of the process there, who is reviewing those documents, doesn't have the time to read through every single instance, and they themselves are taking the risk.
Yeah,
the exposure that they're putting themselves through
it's huge, right? And I think, unfortunately, GRC and the privacy parts of organizations are probably behind the technical curve comparative to an operational security team, or maybe the people doing engineering, like they're really ahead of the curve. And this is where this bubble of GRC engineering is starting to form, which is the practice of GRC engineering and probably, I guess, somewhat privacy needs to be thought of about how it's engineered. You said at the very beginning, it's so easy to go and create an app in your bedroom right now. Well, it's actually so easy to try and augment some of your GRC posture using engineering principles and practices for continuous monitoring. And there has to be a world in which we drag these parts of the organizations to be more technical and to be more frontline, to let technology solve the problem and rid of the manual work. But some of them feel a little bit reluctant because of the way things are right now. And I would just implore people to think about how you can really engineer your way out of these solutions, to give yourself more time to think about what matters, rather than doing questionnaires, rather than having to do a bunch of DPO reviews. What can you get engineering to solve and fix? Continuous monitoring, building tests, using control mapping automatically. These things are really important, which means when you do need to focus on a new sub-processor for the business, you have the time to really go and trust but verify on those sub-processors, because you know that the daily churn is being handled.
It's funny, like we as professionals are there to manage risk, but actually we need to take risk to innovate.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting tension, because the types of people that go into governance, risk and compliance roles are either from a legal background or compliance driven backgrounds tend to be all about avoiding risk. But actually really the thing we need to do right now is do some things differently, which means having some kind of risk appetite to do those things.
You have to have a high risk tolerance to be effective in today's modern age, because the mitigations and controls to counter that aren't a thing right now. You look at Claude Enterprise, great tool, really good for augmenting you, but the level of privacy and security control you get out of that is mediocre at best. There are things you can do, and there are right things you should have on or off, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
No.
But if you want to work effectively, you kind of have to take that as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
You can be the slow, archaic people that slows your business down, well, that's bad.
Yeah.
Or you can have a little bit more risk and you are kind of comfortable accepting. And I know which one I'm picking.
If you did nothing, you're accepting a bunch of risk by definition, because the world is changing around you, and
Good point.
you just stood still.
Not moving to
Not moving it is a massive risk.
It's very like mountaineering to me. As mad as that sounds, it's like people think that you go and climb mountains, you're a bit tapped, and you're adrenaline junkie or whatever. But it's actually all the training you do is about safety and mitigating risk. So it's like I learned how to do this with the rope. I learned how to do this with a harness, with an ice axe, with crampons, to not put myself in danger. Yes, you're going up something, but it's like whatever. That's the point. It's like you actually the whole training, the whole knowledge around it is about safety. There is an element of risk of how you go about it, and like talking about like the levels of risk. If you go to the Alps, the French and the British have very different attitudes to the way they might move through a mountain. A French guide might throw a rope round a rock that's very secure, and it means you can move very fast. whereas the Brits are belt and braces. You have to be properly, hooked in onto the Caribbean, everything. Whereas like that's your sort of level. But
I think you're telling us to be more French.
well, yeah, in this circumstance, yeah, because the problem with the belt and braces of the British version of that
you get on the mountain slower.
well, that and then if the weather changes, or if you need to move, you can do it if you've got time and everything.
Okay.
But if you need to move quick and you're not practiced at it, or you're not, that's where it comes. You get stuck, and that's where you get exposed to dangers. So yeah, I look at this. That's how my brain sees a lot of this stuff. Like you're saying about the level of risk exposure is very much like that. Like, yes, you are trying to avoid something bad happening, but the whole point is that you can move forward and have successes with it and everything else.
I suppose on that as well, I mean, we talked about the risk of using these tools, but they've also massively lowered the barrier to entry as well. That you can go find open source projects now. We were talking about one earlier, the CISO toolkit. You can find skill files for Claude work where they've got perfectly mapped out SOC 2 information, ISO information to help you audit your business. That there is two sides to this coin. You can be reckless with it and you can use it to do stupid things, but also the power that it enhances, if you can harness it, it's massive, especially for the smaller teams as well. We've all worked in startups where you wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
You've been a DPO just because you were sat there at the table one day. The ability to lean on something and explore the internet and people building these tools as well. Like I said, then open source tools and things like that. There are more of them. If you can verify them and you can put trust in them, it's such an easier landscape to work once you get there.
Oh yeah, if you're in those security teams now and you feel like you're caught in this space, then now is the opportunity to go and try it and test it and do something different, because it is so much easier, and it's those people that won't do that who will get left behind. I think that's the fact. You will get left behind if you're not thinking at least on how you may augment yourself in a different way. But I think there's a level of responsibility on vendors in the security space to educate people on that, because lots of these companies are trying to build their own top line and grow their company, increase their headcount, sell the thing, make the thing they're trying to do. And there are vendors trying to shove AI down everyone's throat, but no one's really telling them why or how. And I think, as we all represent vendors in this room, we have the responsibility to educate people on how to doing it properly.
Yeah.
We speak about, the cool tool that you guys are building and how we're using that to make our lives easier. But we're quite well educated in how to use AI properly.
Yeah.
How many conversations do you have in a week with CISOs about how AI is risky and what the risky practices are that people need to be educated and taught? And I think we have to be the ones to do that in the first instance, because it's not happening naturally in their own ecosystems.
It is interesting. So if you talk to CISOs, they know that they can't be the Department of No. It's really well accepted now that if you're a CISO, you can't be like, can I use this new tool? No, like that just doesn't work, and you'll be seen as standing in the way of progress.
Yeah.
If you're a blocker to the organisation transforming itself into the organisation it needs to be, then you're just going to be in the way and be removed pretty darn quickly. So CISOs are much more in the headspace of being the Department of maybe, but let's just have a chat about it. Or ideally, Department of yes, but let's just do these other things to make sure it's okay. And I think most security leaders and privileged officers do understand that. It's not like they don't understand that, but I think there's an opportunity to optimize how that all happens, and that's really, I think, people are kind of discovering right now, like how they're figuring it out, figuring out how to do it.
So we're building the plane as we fly it. We have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of that, from a security perspective, of trying to be the Department of maybes rather than no's, comes from the fact that they adopted the engineering practice? You talk about GRC engineering, come from the fact that they adopted engineering practices quicker than privacy has, compliance has in general.
I think so, because I'm using technology to ask and answer some of the tougher questions which do slow down people, or the reason why people say no. Like if you're well versed in technology and have good engineering practices, you can probably understand a little bit about how the said technology works. But if you're then going to do a questionnaire or do a review, you know the right questions to ask, just to sit behind a WAF. You know, how is your data segmented? You understand what the engineering principles are for good data security, and being able to, like you said, ask the 6 top level important questions and ignore all the guff becomes the why you be faster.
It's interesting. DPOs quite often end up being the person that didn't move out the way quickly enough when somebody said, "Who wants to be DPO?" or also
Hospital pass.
or quite often it's the legal counsel,
Yeah.
right? So they're legal professionals rather than technologists. So in the sort of DPO CISO relationship, often they're leaning on their CISO counterparts to provide the assurance or to provide the sort of way of doing things. So I think, you know, as we've been discussing it, the whole idea of having a partnership with that legal professional whereby you're offering up like a almost completed assurance package, but they can then ask questions about, answers all the right questions.
Yep.
So they can then, it's just more straightforward for them to accept.
Yeah.
But still ask, you know, all the good questions. I think that seems to be like the way it's heading. I still think we're probably, the number of organisations are exactly lined up like that at the moment probably isn't everyone.
Yeah.
No,
It's,
we see typically two sets of DPOs, which is people like yourselves, where well versed, well experienced, know engineering principles and everything else inside out. And then you get the people who, like you say, didn't get out of the way quick enough or whatever, and it was like, we're going to go for ISO and we need you to do it. You're the person in charge because everyone else is busy with everything else. And they're like, okay, I've got no clue about any of this. What the hell do I do? And that's kind of the thinking behind, like, with co-DPO. Like, it's not just the assistant and the agent for people who know what they're doing. It's for people who are going in blind and need a leg up from the very start with everything. They haven't got a clue where to start.
Everything is about the jumping off point.
Yeah.
AI will make that jump easier. I think we've all seen that in the work that we do.
Yeah.
But it's that, what is the leg up, and getting a trusted voice to tell you what the leg up is in a right area, and surround yourself with, you know, don't ask AI for the leg up, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Connect with people, network with people, go and speak to lawyers, go and speak to, you know, GRC engineers to understand what good looks like. Get your jumping off point from a place of reason and human intelligence, and then let artificial intelligence kind of make that principle easier to implement.
Definitely. And on the GRC engineering stuff, you guys are making roads with this, and you're in the community of GRC engineers. What are you seeing that's working best out of all of them?
So I think that the first thing that I'm seeing working the most is being able to continuously monitor levels of like controls or indicators in your business. So being able to not say, oh, we check this thing every 6 months that we're doing access controls reviews, or that our WAFs are running a correct rule set. You know, we check that every 6 months, and then when audit comes, we do a final check, and then we show them a screenshot. It's actually, well, how are you checking that every minute?
Yeah.
Every day, and when there is a slight deviance, where are you, where and how are you addressing that? And the prime thing I'll give an example of is, an engineer may build a service and deploy that, and it may not be compliant at the point that it's deployed. Now, we'll get a signal that shows, you know, if you're checking every 6 months that you need to go and fix something, and yeah, that might be a genuine mistake, and there might be something in the pipeline that didn't work, and they'll go and fix that. Great, but you were running at risk and non-compliant for a particular point of time, and that's not good. And continuous assurance is about, firstly, never making sure that happens in the first place. Can you have compliance as code? Can you have your policies mapped out to frameworks that are like a Claude skill can understand when you're implementing technology? But also, the moment that gets deployed, are you doing the check as soon as it's online that it has been deployed in a compliant way? So you're not waiting to kind of figure out you had an oopsie. You know this straight from the beginning, and you're never having to kind of like mop up what may have been an issue before.
Does that mean that the tools that you're integrating with now they have to have that focus so that you can build all of these processes around them, or do you expect those tools to have that continuous element built into them?
I expect any tool I have to have a level of API or data available to me to run a check whenever I need to. I think typically we're finding most platforms we have to build this ourselves. there aren't many vendors in the place that are making continuous monitoring easy. There are some that are doing it, but it's not easy, and it's not based on my technical nuance on how I do things. So we're having to build a lot of this ourselves and monitor our own APIs and store the data ourselves and then run a check. I think we've got a long way to come in that area. And I think, you guys are probably primed to kind of help support a lot of the continuous monitoring from an external surface point of view. But a lot of the quick wins happen internally, but it's still very much an engineering task to build right now.
Yeah. It isn't the point about the fact that the cadence has changed. So you used to buy a tool, you deploy it, and then you check it once a year to see if it still complies. Yeah. And that doesn't work anymore. That's fundamentally broken. So, and there's two things happening. One is there's more stuff, it's moving faster, and then once you've got it, it drifts quicker than it used to.
Yeah.
So you've got to get around that problem somehow. If you're accountable for the risk, then you've got to address that problem. And the only way you're going to do that is by having some way of checking on an ongoing basis. If you don't do that, you're at risk. You've got the gap. So, and this risk also manifests in like trying to map everything in use in an organisation. Right? There's an economist called George Box. He had this great quote which I always wheel out, which is, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And like most people are modelling their organisation, they've got some sort of CMDB, God forbid, of their organisation, like where they've mapped all of their services and all of the assets and everything. And it's fundamentally wrong, but it's still way better than nothing. Even that gap has increased as people are not coming to ask nice questions about using new tools anymore and just doing it. So it's all about like doing it faster and keeping pace and trying to reach the edges of the model all the way along all the time. So everything all at once.
Massively. The thing that scares me the most in everything that we do is, and I say this to you all the time, it's just those unknowns.
Yeah.
If I know what they are, I can plan for them. Yeah. I can mitigate it. I can try to understand them. I can make them known to me. If I don't know what they are, I can't see them, or I can't work out how to see them. That is the biggest. Yeah.
Typical security was all about throwing in a control, whether it fixed a problem or gave you, a level of visibility or not. Fundamentally, you have to go visibility first now. Like, why are you going to implement a WAF if you're not aware of what the inbound traffic looked like? Why are you going to go and put in blocks on AI tooling when you don't know what AI tooling is being used in your business? Everything nowadays starts with visibility, because visibility leads to knowledge. Knowledge is power and can lead to a conversation. That's where you find the right control, which meets the balance of everyone in the room of, well, you need to be technically fast, you need to be privacy, and your obligations need to stand true. I need to make sure you're compliant. That only happens when you have data to back it up. Throwing in a tool that blocks something doesn't do that. Yeah. Getting visibility does. And there is a period where you will run at risk, where you have visibility, some bad stuff is going on. If it's critical, stop it, please. But if not, and you can just sit and lay low for a while, you're going to be way more better off implementing the right thing that meets everyone's needs as a business, just by spending some time listening and learning.
And education is so important in that, isn't it? Not every vendor, external resource is going to be perfect. Most of them are going to be far from it. And that's what we're just saying about the maybe situation. If you can educate and you can understand how that tool can be used within the bounded scope of what we expect, the first thing that you need to be able to make that decision is the visibility, is understanding, okay, we know where the gaps lie with this particular tool. That's fine. Use it in this way, and it's fine. Maybe we can do it that way. Maybe that might be not sharing PII with the tool in certain regulations, or maybe using it in a particular way. But if you can see where the problem is, and you can understand it's not just the lack of something missing, it's not actually there, then you can plan for it, mitigate it, and understand it much better in that scenario.
People are missing where things are as well, aren't they? Like with AI, like living in most tools, like Canva, it's in Notion, it's everywhere, and it's like, are they actually aware of it? Is it on an AI register if they're using that?
If they're using it, where's it going?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And then as more of these tools integrate, Canva was last week. Now it's a cloud skill, now it's a cloud tool, and I think a lot of the work you guys do around picking up where people are using AI, the fact that they might have a personal Canva account, but the company doesn't use it. So they're doing a presentation and they've thrown it into Claude, they're secure, they're in the company environment, and then they go, I could just do with editing this in there, and they throw it out, and it's like immediate breach kind of risk as well, just happening all over the place. But that's a massively growing concern.
The key thing there is though, that, yes, that's bad practice from a level of compliance and privacy perspective, but knowing how your employee base use AI is far more effective than what they're doing. Yeah. Why were they using Canva? Is that because Google Slides doesn't provide them the level that they need, which makes them more effective at that job? And that's what security leaders need to be considering right now. A CISO is in a really good position to represent the company's adoption of technology in a safe way. Yeah. Work with your CTO or your CIOs to work out what is right for the business. But the CISO feels like in a really prime position right now to be like, oh, you want to do all of this cool stuff? Great. Well, let me help you get onboarded to that in a safe way. And that's what the conversation should be like. So if I was that employee using Canva, and okay, if it contained PII, I'd probably raise an incident handle with a breach and do all the right things, but I'm not coming down to scorn them. I'm being like, well, why did you use Canva? What's wrong with Google Sheets? Do you reckon anyone else in this business is going to find that effective to stop the next 4 people doing exactly the same thing?
Also, you are a means of the organization reaching consensus. So if you're an engineering team, you've probably got a bunch of technology curious people who are going to look at ways of building code using different tool sets, whether that's Cursor or Claude Code or whatever it is. But at some point, the organization has to reach a consensus on what their chosen tool is. And you're kind of, as a risk owner, you're kind of a conduit for helping the organization arrive at that point. So
everyone made big bets on what public cloud provider to use. Everyone has made a big bet, whether you're an Office or a Google Workspace company. Right now, people are making decisions on which AI camp they sit in. Yeah. And Anthropic are winning, let's be clear, but I think we have to be the ones to help herd those sheep, or more like herd those cats, into that being the right tool, because it's going to become a cornerstone of your technology stack no matter where you are. And do you want to be paying for 4 or 5 different best of breed AI tools, or can you go all in on one? And that's what we've done here at Harmonic. We're very all in on Anthropic and doing it in a way that we know we can control, that we can have a level of compliance and security over it. Great, we get to use our own product, amazing. It makes our lives a little bit easier, but that's why we've not gone on everywhere else, because we think this gives us the best bang for our buck, just like we are with Google Workspace, just like we are with certain areas of other technology.
And that's right, it all goes, compliance is fabrication of fabric of all part of your business, isn't it? And it goes into the business continuity and things like that. Picking these tools is so much more important than just which one is the most secure or which one is the most X thing in the business. It's this whole collection.
There's some really interesting stuff like what is your context window provider?
Yeah.
Like which is the thing that understands your business better than any other is also like a hugely important question.
Yeah. Do you want to use Meta's 10 million context window,
or are we spending money in the right? Are we spending money in the right way? Are we spending money on tokens that are super expensive when we could be spending money on a locally hosted small language model that is very efficient at doing it and costs us a tenth of the price? Like
we were at the same flywheel, and that exact conversation was there.
How many people use Opus and not even understand the difference between Opus and Sonnet? Like, can anyone in this room articulate it? Even I would struggle to. But everyone's using Opus because they think it's the best thing since sliced bread.
And spending millions of pounds to process.
And all you're doing is asking it to write a Slack message for where you want to go to the pub after work. Like, come on now.
I think the
token economics.
As well as all the tooling to keep up with, the regulation is evolving around. We're seeing things like the Colorado AI Act. It's 2's on its way, EU AI Act, and even things like AI UC1, which is the framework for agents. Whereas that's not widely adopted just yet because it's like sort of consortium led. It's not market led just yet. The big players have kind of put that all together and said, here's how we think agents should act. And like the team's just trying to keep up. It's just horrendous. The smaller team you are, and you're like, and again, your job is to sell into companies the same size, bigger than yourself, and enterprise eventually, whatever. if you're getting this laundry list of, are you doing this, and this, like, how is that going to be just?
Well, I think this is the role that vendors have to play, right? If you are in those go-to-marketing teams, you're trying to scale to businesses. I think in today's world, it's not just about winning the deal. I think you have to take people on a journey with you. You have to be seen as a consultant almost. Like we pride ourselves in the ability that we want to work with practitioners and tell them what the right thing to do is. Whether you buy the tool or not doesn't matter. Yes, please buy it. It would be great. But the fact is, we want to win your loyalty, and we want to show you that we are the best of breed. We know what we're talking about, and we'll give you that for free. And like that's what's needed. Like, we are the best people to try and keep up with this stuff because we live and breathe it, comparative to a pharmaceutical company or another healthcare provider or a post office, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that we're giving people the leg up and the loan, like I said earlier, because they don't have the time to figure it out.
No.
And we want to be able to say, well, this is what the ACU one does, and this is why we think you should consider it. This might be my go-to marketing play within it. That's fine, but let's be more educative to people so they can follow along with us.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the approach. I think that's where the irony in a lot of this, when you look at this, if you go back to like the early stage startup side of it, they often need a lot of this stuff more than anyone because they have to have this to get through the door, but they haven't got a clue about it. So then that's where I think they'll go to immediately. They'll go to Claude or ChatGPT. They'll ham together a policy that's not great. And then it's again what data's gone into that, and it's exposing everything as well. It's
no different to like job descriptions now for AI engineers saying you need 10 years of experience in AI when it's only really been knocking around for 5. Like, come on. Like, how do you expect a 2-year-old startup to be this level of in-depth compliant when all they've been trying to do is figure out how to get to market and build the right product? And leaders, I think, need to be more cognizant of the newer players coming up through this sphere. Are these smaller startups that are, maybe a little bit riskier for you to deal with, but trust me, their head's screwed on far better than these archaic vendors that have been in the space for 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a balance in itself, and it's like going back to the point about how easily you can spin something up as a very basic tool or something using the various tools that are out there. That there's thousands and thousands of new startups every day emerging. So companies are either, especially the more mature companies, are like, do we use this startup that we think is cool, or do we use this old school tool with a badge on it that we know about because it's the old thing, we think we can trust it? But that's going back to your point about being consultative and being experts in the room and going, we will take you through this process. Like, that's what we'll help you with, and that gives the trust as well.
I do wonder whether, though, there's a bit of a misunderstanding that because Harmonic's a business that's 2.5, nearly 3 years old now. From day one, when we started the journey, when we were talking to customers about the way that we're compliant, we chose to do it in an authentic way, in a transparent way, and in an honest way, so that when we have the conversation with the customer, it engenders trust between us and the customer, and they believe what we're saying to them. And I guess every new business, so we're a security company, so we're more likely to take that sort of approach versus a business that, security is more of not an afterthought, but is more of something that's more adjacent to your main business. A bolt-on rather than the actual main business. So I think there's sort of a thing in early stage companies to try and sell the reason for being authentic and transparent and all of those things up front, but to also prove that you can do it and move fast and be like a early stage business and do it in the right way. So I think it's just sort of trying to get people to buy into the art of the possible of having a principled, open, honest approach about your assurance is really important. I'm not sure how to. That's what should happen. I don't know how you fix it, but that's really the way it should be.
Similar approach. A climate compliance company got to be airtight on everything we do around that. We can't be like selling a solution to it when we can't do it ourselves. So we have to be like that up front. We have to be like, there's where we're at on our journey. There's where what we've got coming up the pipeline. There's where it is now. This is what it's capable of. There's everything transparent like that you need to see about us. It's there. So it's like it's exactly that thinking. But I think
so we're lucky, right? Because we're both companies that are in compliance or in a governance space, but how do you get somebody who's not in that space to?
Well, I think that's
do
what
that?
caused the problems we spoke about at the start of this, is that people just want the badge, they want the speed so that they can sell. They don't really care about how they do it. And I think the shift has to come that people do care about it, and not just care about it, but have the education around it, understand what it means to be, when you're ticking a box on a questionnaire or saying you've got this in place, you're saying, actually, I know that happens, and I know we do this every week. We do that
Some of these shifts are happening. Tools like Granola, Whisperflow, some of these more lovable, these like big hit tools that are coming, they have the right people that are becoming those. So I actually think that a shift is happening whereby those new non-compliant security type vendors who want to build a good tool for people to use, they know the fact it will be used in an enterprise, and they want to make that route to market so easy. Like, I think Granola is a great tool. I think Whisperflow is a great tool. Would I use it if they weren't compliant? No. But because they are, and we feel comfortable that they can be used at work because we can attest to that. And they've done it in a way which is in accordance to everything that we've said. And they've used AI to probably do that in a way that makes their life a little bit easier, because they are seeing how security and privacy is now a route to winning a deal, and a route to winning a customer. Like, we buy through trust now because AI has meant that we can't trust.
Yeah, and that's why the get to market side of it is so powerful for us as like practitioners in the space, isn't it? Is that ultimately, if you don't do your job in this space, you don't do it efficiently and correctly, you're hindering the growth of your organization.
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned things like, I saw on your LinkedIn the other day about the Claude update, and that's a major shift for a lot of people, that they want to adopt Claude, but they're like, I just can't at this point, but now they can because of those things. I think the more we see around that, the more tools like the Lovables and everything else, like you said, the more they take that. It's not that they're not taking it seriously, but the more they provide people to be able to adopt, the easier it is to adopt, the easier it is to get through. So when you present to an enterprise, or you're using Claude code, and it's like, yes, but it's not a red flag anymore because it's in that.
And Anthropic are a really good example of that, because think about the amount of resources they have and the amount of features they're shipping all the time. They have chosen to ship security features at an enterprise level at the right time. Are they amazing? No. Are they a good first step? Yes. And they're finding that right balance between creating the tool that everyone is moving to, but doing something at the pace which is just about enough for a security team to get a handle on it, rather than too much security and not enough product, or too much product and not enough security. I think they really have found a good level of middle ground. Do I wish they did more? Yes. Will they? Yes. Can I live with it for now? Yes, I can. I think that's the positive, that we adopted it at Harmonic. Everyone's using it in a really strong way, and I genuinely believe it's making us a better org and 10xing the way that we work. But we've done that with trust and faith in how Anthropic have given us the features we need.
And that's where your tool chain as well needs to be flexible enough to allow you, as that designated person, to be able to make the right decision based on all of the information that you have available to you at the right time, continuously, always be in the know. But it's not always going to be the same answer, because you could work with a similar tool in a much larger business with a similar profile, and that would be a much riskier thing for you.
Yeah, or vice versa. OpenAI are trying to catch up with Anthropic now. Of course, what are they doing? Building in the things that everyone's moaning that Anthropic doesn't have. So it's just an arms race at the minute of catch 20. But that's why the continuous thing needs more. I need someone to tell me, well, this is actually better for this, and this is not, and it's that kind of keeping up with the Joneses style arms race that we're having to balance, and no one is giving insight into that. And that's why what you guys are doing is super valuable, because I just need to, tomorrow might be different. So I should just go and check tomorrow to see whether you've picked up on that, and that's really helpful for us.
Absolutely. And just on that, I suppose we're pretty much at the top of the hour kind of thing. So probably finish with maybe like a bit of a final message to the practitioners out there. I know you guys have done loads of really good work with helping security leaders through the information you share regularly on the blogs and the guides that you put out. So from this conversation, is what would be that message to those practitioners?
I think my view is, firstly, the message is that if you don't know that third-party risk management and kind of the privacy review of a bunch of companies nowadays is broken, it is. Do not believe that what you're doing right now will stand the test of time. I would implore people to look at how to use engineering to solve those problems, and use visibility and data to leave your decisions as your first port of call, not just throwing out a new questionnaire or a new compliance check.
Things are going to change, and I think the opportunity for both compliance and governance professionals is they should be part of that change rather than just sort of waiting for the change to come to them.
Brilliant. Joe, anything to add?
I think it's a growing space. I think it's quite an exciting time to be a practitioner in this space, and it's having its, I'm not going to say renaissance, but it's definitely getting more exciting than the boring checkbox exercises that it used to be.
Yeah, and I'd echo all of that and finish with just saying use Harmonic, use Autocomply.
Of course.
Well, thanks, gents. I think that